Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Good morning, class. This is our 8th episode or our 8th class. It's gonna be on from now, and maybe another 2 classes will be on movement into and out of the cells, which is chapter number 3 in your curriculum. And based on this chapter, we will have 3 topics that are of a great importance, and we have to learn about them. The first one is the diffusion. We have to know from core and supplement, both of them. They have to know the first 5 items, which about describe diffusion, also state that energy diffusion, how it occurs, and state that the same substance move into and out of the cells, and describe the importance of diffusion of gases. So we are going to deal with all these things. Also, for the second topic, which is the osmosis, it's going to be about describe the role of water as a solvent, and also state the water diffuses state that water diffuses through partially permeable membranes by osmosis, and state that water moves into and out of the cells by osmosis through the cell membrane, and also investigate osmosis using materials such as dialysis tubing, and investigate and describe effects of plants. Then at the end, for the core, is the state of the plants are supported by the pressure of water inside the cells. The third part, or actually the supplementary part or the supplement part, is going to be about 2 more topics. Describe osmosis as the net movement of water molecules from a region of higher water potential diluted solutions to a region of lower water potential, that means concentrated solutions, through a partially permeable membrane. And number 8, which is the second topic for the supplement, important for the supplement, is explain the effects on the plants cells immersing them in water, and explain the importance of water potential and osmosis in uptake and loss of water by organisms. So those are the main topics, subtopics that we are going to study, with the big topic, which is the osmosis, the second one. The last one is the active transport, which is a very important topic. There is only one subtopic of it for the core, which is describe active transport and movement, and then for the supplement, explain the importance of active transport as a process of movement of molecules or ions across membranes, including the uptake by root air. And the second item is, or the second subtopic is, state the protein carriers move molecules or ions across the membrane during active transport. So those are the main topic, or this is our curriculum of doing the chapter 3, the movement in and out the cells, for both core students and also supplementary students. Let us have a couple of seconds and then start again. Okay, now we will start and going forward towards our chapter 3, movement into, out and into and out of the cells or cells. Okay, there are only three processes that are very important and which are actually our topics, our main topics in this class, or actually in chapter 3. Number one is the diffusion. Number two, or the process number two, is the osmosis. And number three is the active transport. Those are three processes that are important for all living beings, including human, for all cells, for all animals, for all types of plants, and we will go and discuss each one separately. We will start today with the diffusion. This resembles the two types of diffusion, the simple diffusion and the facilitated diffusion. We will see what is the difference between both of them. Here we are going for osmosis, and we will see how the semi-permeable membrane or semi-permeable membrane is important, and what is the effect of it, and how water is going on. Active transport is another type of, or the third process that is very important in transporting or movement of particles. And by particles, we mean atoms, molecules, ions, compounds, whatever, through the cell or from place to place. And here we are, because we are studying biology, so we care about cells. I just want to remind you, when we talk about diffusion, we usually talk about solutes, that means particles movement. When we talk about osmosis, we talk about water molecules movement, not the solute. So be careful about that. It is actually the diffusion of water through a semi or semi-permeable membrane. And here we are going to delay this till we reach the active transport and see what is actually moving and how it moves from place to place. Let us take a couple of seconds break and come back again. Okay, in this session, we are going to concentrate on diffusion. We will not talk about the other two topics, osmosis or neither osmosis nor active transport. We are going to take each one by itself. So what is diffusion? What do we mean by diffusion? Okay, let us go for our definition. It is the net movement. And by the net movement, we mean the overall movement or the average movement. So it is the net movement of particles. Particles means substance. It means also atoms, molecules, ions, or even compounds. Okay? From a region of their high concentration, to the region of their lower concentration, down a concentration gradient as a result of random movement. We have to consider this information. So first, it is the overall or the net movement, the average movement of the particles, which may be atoms, molecules, ions, from region of high concentration, where is an abundance of this substance, to the region of their lower concentration, where the substance is the least amount, down a concentration gradient. So what is the concentration gradient? Is the difference between the high concentration minus the lower concentration. There is two concentrations here. High concentration, let us assume it is X, and low concentration, let us assume it is Y. So it is the difference between X minus Y. This is called concentration gradient as a result of their random movement. What is the random movement? The random movement of such particles. This definition we would like to add to this definition two main characteristics. The first characteristic is that diffusion is a passive process. What do we mean by a passive process? We mean that the diffusion, which is here, the passive process, by passive process we mean that the diffusion doesn't require an outside energy source. Again, by passive process we meant that the diffusion as a vital process does not require an outside energy source. This is the characteristic number one. The characteristic number two, it requires no energy other than the particulate kinetic energy. It requires no energy other than the particulate kinetic energy. So the only energy needed is the kinetic energy. What is the kinetic energy? It is the self-movement of, or the self-energy of the particulate itself. You have to understand that. Now, another thing that is important, random movement of the particle. That means this substance or these particles move in a random way, random behavior, that some are moving upwards, some downwards, some at the sides. So it goes randomly. Okay, so this is what's meant by random movement. That movement is not only one directed movement or motion. And when this diffusion ends, molecules or particles continue to diffuse until equilibrium. What do we mean by equilibrium? We mean that the movement in post direction equal the same. For example, two molecules goes from left to right and two molecules goes from right to left. This is mean equilibrium. So again, equilibrium, it is the net movement of particles, substances, from the region of high concentration to the region of lower concentration, down a concentration gradient as a result of their random movement. It has two characteristics. Diffusion is a passive process It requires no energy other than the particulate kinetic energy. It has a random movement. We see that in the we say that in the definition, and also the end of the diffusion takes place when it reaches the equilibrium point. Let us have some seconds to a break and then come back again. Now we move forward. We would like to know that is there any types of diffusion? That means there is more than one type of diffusion. Yes, there are two types of diffusions. The first one is called simple diffusion. The second one is called facilitated diffusion. A simple diffusion, this one, is a form of diffusion that does not require the assistance of a membrane protein. You know that we talk about the cell membrane, and we say that the cell membrane is bilayer of proteins and a bilayer of lipids sandwiching one layer of protein. So the simple diffusion takes place without taking care of the membrane proteins. In essence, the particles or substances move from higher to lower concentration without any help of membrane proteins. And this is very, very important. Facilitated diffusion is something else. In facilitated diffusion, we are going to use the membrane protein in order for this substance to go inside the cell or to go outside of the cell, to exit the cell or to inlet the cell. This process should be done through a molecule. This molecule is like Uber car, you see, or a taxi. You need to go from place to place. You can't go on foot. So you need some device, either your car or somebody else's car, to take you to the place. So the facilitated diffusion needs an Uber. An Uber means a car that takes you from this place to this place, and you have to pay rent for that, or to pay the wage, to pay the cost of your traveling. And here you can see there are molecules that get into the cell through this protein. Here there is no. So how in simple diffusion, what are the characteristics of molecules that get into the cell through simple diffusion but not facilitated diffusion? This is important for the molecules that are fat soluble, that can be soluble in fats or lipids. So if it's lipid soluble, it's going to be dissolved in lipids and then get into. If it is not, it needs a protein carrier, an Uber, to get into the cell. So here, those are non-fat soluble, so they are water soluble. They cannot get into the cell without helping of a protein, and this is the case here. You see it here. You are going to see it and see how the difference is between the two of them. Let us take a break. So before we proceed on, we would like to take care of some terminologies, because it's going to appear every now and then. And the first one is the concentration gradient. A concentration gradient is an imaginary slope from a high concentration to a low concentration. So if we have particles here, and here all the particles were in the up of a slope, so there is a high concentration here. If we leave this particle to diffuse, they are going down the concentration gradient towards then here to diffuse up to the bottom. So this is a low concentration one. And equilibrium is the condition of a system when neither its state or motion nor its internal energy state tends to change with time. So simply, it is like a balance where this amount is equal to this amount. So there is no movement between the balance. The balance two hands doesn't move. Scales, two scales doesn't move ups and down. They are in equilibrium state. Now also we are still in terminologies. We have three more terminologies, and the first one is the kinetic or the kinetic energy. The kinetic energy. The kinetic energy is the energy of moving object. The more kinetic energy the particle have, the faster they move. And we are going to take the last part to define how diffusion takes place. So be careful about the kinetic energy, because if the kinetic energy changes, this is going to increase something, to increase the other processes. So kinetic energy is the energy of moving objects. The more kinetic energy of the particles have, the faster they move. Then the net movement. The net movement is the overall of average movement or average movement. It is to say the fairly and even spread of molecules. The last but not least, the particles, the smallest pieces of which substance is made, either atoms or ions or molecules. Break. Now we know the diffusion and we know also some terminologies. We would like here to explain if the diffusion is an independent process or it depends on some factors. What I mean is that there are some factors that in a way or the other manipulates the rate of diffusion. The rate of diffusion means the movement of diffusion from high concentration to low concentration of particles, from high concentration to low concentration across or down the concentration gradient per time. And time here may be second, may be minute, may be an hour. It depends upon what is the time is given to you. Here, the first one is the temperature. Okay? Before we study that, what does temperature do? Temperature is either going to be high, so we are going to heat the substance, or we are going to cool the substance. So when we heat the substance, the temperature of this substance is going to rise, to increase. When we cool this substance, it's going to get down. So what happens to this substance to any substance, including even solids? Solids are the least affected. But let us say for gas or move, what is happening? When we heat it, we actually increase the spaces between the molecules or the particles. When we increase the spaces between the particles, we offer them more space to move. So when we increase the temperature of a substance, that means we are going to increase its energy. That means it's going to be faster to move. That means diffusion rate is going to be high. So it is a linear increase. In the other aisle, another increase. If the temperature increases, the rate of diffusion is increases. Why it increases? Because temperature offer more space by moving the particles apart. When there is a space, particles move freely. When they move freely, their kinetic energy increases. So by this, we can say the rate of diffusion is directly proportional to its temperature. When we say directly proportional, means it is a linear positive relationship or proportion, which means it is directly proportional to each other. So the rate of diffusion increases by the increasing of the temperature, and vice versa. The rate of diffusion decreases by cooling the temperature. Why we do that when we cool it? Why it going to decrease? Because cooling is going to humble or huddle. The particles are going to huddle to each other, and the space between them is going to be less. And when the space between them going to be less, their random movement is going to be restricted. So their energy, the kinetic energy, is going to be less. The diffusion also is going to be less. And for this reason, you have to understand this one. This is the rate of diffusion in the y-axis. In the x-axis, it's temperature per centigrade. So whenever the temperature increase, the rate of diffusion increase. And this linear positive direction is called directly proportional. The same thing for the concentration gradient. So the concentration gradient is directly proportional to the rate of diffusion. That means if I have a great amount of concentration or a huge amount of concentration, a big concentration, a larger concentration, as the concentration gradient increases, the rate of diffusion increases. As the concentration gradient decreases, the rate of diffusion decreases. So this is a proportional, a direct proportional relationship, and this is the two against each other in this plot: the rate of diffusion, temperature, or the rate of diffusion and the concentration gradient. Let us take a minute. Now the last, or actually the third factor that has a positive effect on the rate of diffusion is the surface area per volume. The surface area compared to volume or to the volume. So the rate of diffusion is directly proportional to the surface area exposed. Whenever you make it the area bigger, the larger the area, the surface area, the larger the rate of diffusion. And here we can see it in the plot. This is the y-axis where the rate of diffusion, and also this is the surface area. Okay, and it's directly proportional because it always goes there, and you have to consider this arrow. It always goes up in a linear manner, and this means that it is directly proportional to it. Now here I want all of you to pay attention to the plot, to the diagram, to the plot, because now what we have always is a positive relationship. That means if you increase, I am going to increase. If you decrease, I'm going to decrease. This is the way that we already have in the first three factors. But those two factors, it is inversely proportional. That means it is a negative relationship. By negative relationship means if you increase, I'm gonna decrease. If you decrease, I'm gonna increase. It's gonna be reverse. It is the opposite of doing this. So we have three factors with positive, the same direction, and another two items, two factors that have an opposite or a negative relationship. So the first one, which is number 4, is the diffusion distance. The distance between the high concentration and the low concentration. Whenever this is larger, the diffusion rate is going to decrease. Whenever you increase the distance between the high concentration and the low concentration particles, then the diffusion is going to decrease. Whenever you make it the reverse, you decrease the distance between the two, then the rate of diffusion is going to increase. So this effect of the distance of the diffusion distance, that the diffusion distance is inversely proportional to the rate of diffusion. As the rate of diffusion distance increases, the rate of diffusion decreases. As the diffusion distance increases, the rate of diffusion decreases, and vice versa. As the diffusion distance decreases, the rate of diffusion increases. And we are going to use these factors when we come and apply this into cells. So be careful, and be careful about the shape of the plot, because the plot here is different from the upper plot, and this is why it is in red color here. So this is the rate of diffusion, this is the diffusion distance, and here it goes down. It is not going the same direction as each other, so both of them are in a positive manner. Now, one of these is always in a negative manner. So if the rate of diffusion increases, the distance should be decreased, and vice versa. The fifth, which is the last one, is the size of the particles. The size of the particles. Whenever those size of particles, the size of the particles is also inversely proportional to the rate of diffusion. As the size of particle gets smaller, the rate of diffusion increases, and vice versa. As the size of the particles get bigger or larger, the rate of diffusion decreases. They are not going, or they do not take the same direction. One of them is up, the other one is down, and vice versa. Let us go for another one. Now we have the theory of diffusion, and now we would like to apply this theory in biology. To apply it to biology, we'll see how it works. Does it work, or we just talk, we just say something that is not working? Now let us go and see the cells of the small intestine. And before we proceed, I would like you always and every time, you have to remember our rule: the structure matches the function. So in the cells of the small intestine, how the cell of the small intestine get use of diffusion as a vital process. First, there is the villi. This is the villi. This one, the finger-like projection, is the villi, and microvilli. villi and microvilli. Villi and microvilli, if we take just this part up here, we're going to see another small finger projections with smaller finger projections up in the surface. So this is called villi, and here is the microvilli. This, whenever there is a villi or a microvilli, that means I would like to increase the surface area of this organ, because you see your body or your belly is small, whatever, even if you are overweight, it has very specific area. So you cannot increase this area as you like. So in order to increase this area, your cells are adapted to it by having villi and microvilli in their top surface area. And the apical area, or the top surface, is always directly into the lumen of the intestine, into the inner surface of the intestine. So now we have this villi and microvilli that increases the surface area. Last time when we talked about the factor, we said that when the surface area increases, the diffusion rate increases. So this is the first adaptation, and this is how it works. Increasing the surface area, so we do that. Now, each villi contains lacteal. Lacteal is most in a specialized part of this villi, or some of these villi, and this is important to absorb fat or lipids. Again, this is good thing. So it is another adaptation by having a lacteal. Now, the third part is that there is a short distance between the intestinal cells and the blood supplies, blood capillaries. Because of the small distance between them, we said that the distance between the distance of diffusion, smaller the distance of the diffusion, the high rate of diffusion, because this is an inversely proportional relationship. And here it is important to understand that the intestine itself, it has a rich blood supply, and the rich blood supply of blood flow enough and maintain an excellent concentration gradient. We said that the concentration gradient is the difference between the high concentration, which means the nutrients inside the lumen of the intestine is a high concentration, and the low concentration, which is the blood where no nutrients there. So there is a big difference between them. The concentration gradient is very different, is big difference, and this is a direct proportional relationship. That means whenever the concentration gradient increases, the rate of diffusion increases. So the rate of diffusion of nutrients towards the blood is 100% good, and intestine moves its contents into the blood after digesting it. So this is the first adaptation. Break and see. The second types of cells that are adapted for diffusion is the alveoli cells of the lungs. It is very important to understand this and how they adapt their function. So we are applying actually the structure matches the function. So the alveoli, in order to make diffusion easy, The alveoli provide a large surface area, and we talk that when a surface area is the larger the surface area, the higher the concentration rate. The plasma membrane of the alveoli and the blood capillaries are very thin, which provides short distance. So the more short distance increases the rate of diffusion. Blood provides an excellent concentration gradient because when we talk about oxygen that moves from the lungs to the blood, there is high concentration of oxygen in the blood and low concentration in the lungs and low concentration of oxygen in the blood. That means the concentration gradient is big between them and be an excellent way to increase the rate of diffusion. So those are very important three adaptations. Substances, oxygen from alveoli to blood, and also carbon dioxide, because you see, you eat, you make your metabolism, you do anything, and then you produce CO2, which is carbon dioxide. And see, you have to get rid of this carbon dioxide. The blood takes this carbon dioxide to the lungs, and the same process happens. Is that there is a the endothelial cells of the blood capillaries, and because the blood capillaries are more, so they provide a lot of area. That means a big area, surface area. The second thing is that the concentration gradient made by the blood, and actually this time the difference is high because the blood is high in CO2 and which is carbon dioxide, and the lungs have less CO2, which is carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide moves from the blood towards the high concentration to the low concentration in the alveoli, and then expire to the outside. And this is how it works here in this diagram. So it is also another type of adaptation that is more important for living cells and diffusion and living cells. Again, the third part is the placenta. And the placenta actually is composed of two parts. There is a part of it is from the fetus and the part of it from the mother, and both together they come together and connect together in order to exchange materials between the mother and the fetus and vice versa. So the placenta is other type of applications, or a third type of application of cells that has a specific adaptation in order to do the same thing. So it's the presence of villi that provide the larger surface area, and we talk about this when we talk about the intestine. The same thing, it increases the surface area. When you increase the surface area, you increase the rate of diffusion. The plasma membrane of the blood capillaries and villi are that's here. You see them here. All these villi from the mother and villi from the here villi from the mother and also villi from the fetus, and also here in the blood stream. So the plasma membrane of the blood capillaries and villi are very thin, which provide a short distance of diffusion. When you have a short distance of diffusion, you have a high rate of diffusion. Rich blood supply makes an excellent concentration gradient, thus faster diffusion rate. So those are the adaptation required for the placenta in order to make what we see for the diffusion. What are the substances that converted or transported between the mother and the fetus? From the mother, oxygen and nutrients. From the mother also, from the fetus, the carbon dioxide and urea. Also, one of unwanted things may be transferred from the mother to the fetus is the drug, the medicines. If she took, if the mother take any medicines like antibiotics or something like this, it might do the same. It transport it to the fetus. Smoke, the smoking is going to be also a bad habit, and it's going to affect the fetus. Also, the alcohol. This is the most important thing that we have to know about this adaptation. The first type of adaptation in the plant is the stoma on the leaf, and this is also some sort of adaptation or application of diffusion in living cells. And here we have all of this. The substances used is oxygen, and we are going, and this is from airspace through the stoma into the atmosphere. We are going to study this when we come to the this part in how the plant make photosynthesis and how the plants respire. Actually, respiration process in the plant. We are going to do that when we come to this point. So now we have 4 types of cells that are adapted for the process of diffusion, and we see how they are adapted to each other and what are the substances, and we see also a diagram showing what we are talking about. Now we finished our class today. I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate the way you listen to my advice, and also my actually teaching. Also the way you respond to everything that I have did till now. Thank you for all your advices and recommendations, and I will take them in consideration, all of them. I am sorry this is a little bit longer than we always do, but as I promised you, there is no one will take more than 1 hour, and this is about 48 minutes. I wouldn't like to go more than 48 minutes today. Thank you. I really appreciate your patience, and I really appreciate the effort that you already do for each cell. If you have any comments or anything, just put it down in the comment section, and I will revise everything and will get back to you in a way or another. Thank you and have a good day.